You know that sinking feeling when you hear a knock at your door, and deep down you know it's trouble? I'd had that feeling more than a dozen times. But the day the knocking stopped was the day karma knocked for someone else. If you've ever had a neighbor who made your life miserable, stick around. Because this is the story of how my sweet old neighbor turned out to be my biggest headache until karma handed her a fine so big, she stopped knocking forever. It was 2004. I was 24 years old, living in an 18-unit apartment building that was, let's be honest, a glorified cardboard box. The place was old enough to have character, but not old enough to be charming. Every step echoed. Every cough was a shared experience, and if someone sneezed on the third floor, the guy on the first floor probably said, "Bless you." My apartment was on the second floor, Unit 2B, tucked between a young couple on one side and, on the other, Margaret and Harold. At first glance, Margaret was the kind of woman you'd trust to feed your cat while you were away. She had short, perfectly permed silver hair, glasses that hung on a beaded chain, and a floral blouse collection that could rival a vintage store. Harold was quieter, shuffling around with the daily paper and a slow, almost mechanical pace. But from day one, I could tell Margaret watched. Not in a friendly, keep an eye on the neighborhood way. No. This was surveillance. The kind of quiet monitoring where you feel someone's eyes even when you can't see them. The first incident came on a rainy Tuesday night. I was curled up on my sagging couch, socks off, with a mug of coffee that had gone cold, watching The Matrix on my ancient box TV. Volume? Maybe level 8. Then knock, knock, knock. I opened the door to see 2 uniformed police officers. "Evening, sir. We got a call about a noise disturbance coming from your apartment." I laughed nervously. "Oh, really? I'm watching a movie." "That's it." They stepped inside, listened for a moment, and exchanged glances. One officer shrugged. "It's fine. Just maybe turn it down a little." I did. Problem solved, right? Wrong. Over the next few weeks, it happened again. And again. Thursday evening, knock at the door. Saturday afternoon, knock at the door. Sunday morning, for God's sake, Sunday morning, knock at the door. Every time, the same story. Noise complaint. Every time, the same result. Officers checking, realizing it wasn't loud enough to be an issue, and leaving. But here's the thing. Even when you know you're not doing anything wrong, having the police show up over and over messes with your head. My stomach would twist when I heard a knock. My chest would tighten when I heard footsteps in the hallway. I found myself turning my TV down so low I could barely hear it, just to avoid that knock. Margaret, meanwhile, would stand at her doorway when the cops left, arms crossed, lips pursed, eyes sharp. She'd give me that smug, "I'm watching you" look. Harold just shuffled past like nothing was happening. By the 6th visit, my frustration had started to bubble over. I asked the officers, "Look, is there some kind of penalty for calling you out for nothing? Because this is the 6th time, and there's no issue." They didn't give me a direct answer, but one of them hesitated, just long enough for me to see a flicker of thought cross his face, like a seed had been planted. And I watered that seed with every unnecessary knock thereafter. The 12th time was my breaking point. It was a Saturday night, and I'd invited 2 friends over. We were watching a movie, eating chips, and yes, maybe laughing a little loudly. But it was still nowhere near the level of a party. Knock, knock, knock. I opened the door to see the same pair of officers. My shoulders slumped. "Let me guess. Noise complaint." They nodded. This time, I didn't hold back. "Look, guys, you've been here a dozen times. My volume's never over the limit. This is harassment. Isn't there anything you can do about people wasting your time?" The older officer sighed. "We can make a note in our system. If someone repeatedly files false complaints, that can be a problem for them." That was all I needed to hear. Weeks passed. The knocking stopped. No police visits. No sideways glances in the hallway. Just silence. One afternoon, I ran into the building's janitor in the lobby. He was chuckling to himself as he sorted through a stack of mail. "You hear about Margaret?" he asked. "No, what happened?" "She told me she got hit with a huge fine for making false complaints to the police. Said it was harassment or misuse of emergency services, something like that." I stood there processing. A slow grin spread across my face. Karma had knocked. And for once, it wasn't at my door. For the rest of my lease, Margaret never spoke to me. She didn't call the cops again. And while she still gave me the occasional glare, it didn't have the same power. It's funny. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a grand scheme. Sometimes it's just letting someone dig their own hole and waiting for the fall. If this story gave you that satisfying little spark of justice, hit that like button. And tell me, what's the worst neighbor experience you've ever had? Because who knows, your story might just be next.